After entering a monster-filled house, it took over her body and cursed her brother. He started working in the palace, and when he couldn't control his curse, he tied himself up. However, Ray went to him and asked him, "Come closer to me." "Ray, please. Ray, let me go. Free me, please." And Ray Clodan, but... Then she bit her lip nervously and said to him, "I'm sorry. If I help you now, it will only increase your pain later." And here, Clodan was sweating profusely, and then said to her, "I thought you loved me. Did you change your mind at that moment?" But Ray said to him, "You know that's not true. I'm just worried about you, Clodan." And here Clodan started moving in an attempt to break his chains, and here Ray said to him, "Clodan, stop! Stop moving!" And she approached him, saying, "You're going to hurt yourself." "Clodan, please." Then she said to him nervously, "What can I do? How can I help you?" And here Clodan looked at her shyly, and Ray understood, and said to him, "Do you mean it?" And she did it. And Clodan started saying to her, "Ray, hurry up." And here she was, feeling shy and saying to herself, "Am I doing this right? I can't look into his eyes." But I've never seen Clodan like this before. And Clodan looked at her and said, "Ray, I love it, hurry up." And Ray did it. And suddenly Clodan leaned in and kissed her. Then she pulled away from him and said to him, "I'm sorry, I'm going to wash my hands." And Clodan, "Don't leave." And Ray said shyly, "I'm not leaving. I'm just..." And here Clodan was sweating even more and looked at her and said, "Ray, open your legs." And she, "What?" And Clodan, "You're tense, aren't you?" And Ray, "No." And Clodan, "Don't be shy. Ray, I know the expressions you show when you ask for something. Do you think I don't know you? Look at yourself now. Miserable to hide something under your dress?" And Ray said shyly, "I'm not tense, but you can't even show it to me." And Ray, "It's not that I can't." And here Clodan smiled and said to her, "So can you show it to me?" And Ray did it and then said to him, "Is that enough?" And Clodan smiled and said to her, "I can't see you." Ray, "Open them wider." And Ray, "Stop lying. Maybe your vision." Clodan, "Stop whining and open them wider." And Ray, "Stop doing that." Clodan, "I'm embarrassed." And here Clodan made another attempt to break his chains. And here Ray yelled at him and said, "Clodan, what are you doing? Stop!" And Clodan managed to break his chains, and Ray felt scared. At the time, Clodan looked at his hands, then looked at her and smiled. And here Ray fell to the ground in fear, and Clodan went to her and said, "Where do you think you're going?" And he grabbed her and said, "Stop running from me, Ray." And she looked at him shyly and said, "Did you do that on purpose, to test me? Is that why you acted like you couldn't get out of those shackles?" And Clodan, "Didn't you like my acting? It seems your body is telling me otherwise. Not because I'm excited. You're not wet, and you're not excited." And Ray started crying and said no. And here Clodan lifted her up and said to her, "Why are you crying?" Then he kissed her and said, "Because you're embarrassed? Because you hate me? Or because you love me?" And Ray was in shock at his words. And Clodan, "Why aren't you answering me? I'm asking you, do you love me?" Ray's voice trembled as she said it. "What are you waiting for?" And Clodan did it. And here Ray started screaming in pain, saying, "It's too big." And Clodan continued doing it. Then he kissed her and said, "You're all right, Ray." And Ray, "Why do you keep going in deeper?" Clodan, "Because you keep moving." Ray, "Because I'm trying to get it out of me." Clodan, "That's why I'm going in. Do you still love me?" Ray, she looked at him in astonishment and then said to him, "Yes, no matter who I am." Clodan, "I don't care." Ray, "You didn't care that I can't read either, Clodan." And here Ray kissed him. Then she said to him, "It's nothing." And here she remembered when her brother Hytham insulted her and said to her, "Idiot." And here she hugged him happily and said to him, "You have no idea how much that made me happy." And Clodan looked at her shyly and continued doing what he was doing. Then he said to her, "Ray, I love you." And here Ray, in astonishment, said to him, "I'm not dreaming, am I?" Clodan, "You heard me." Ray, "Can you say it again?" Clodan, "Ray, I'm not going to hold back anymore, and you're going to have to give yourself to me completely." Ray, "You're going too fast." Clodan, "And if you don't, I'll never be satisfied." And he kissed her, then said to her, "And I don't care if I break you." And he kissed her gently, saying, "I love you." And here Ray put her hands on his face and started laughing, saying, "Don't ever change." Clodan continued doing what he was doing, saying, "Yes, I promise you." And the next day, with a bright new morning, Ray went out and said happily, "The weather is so nice today." Then she started laughing and said to herself, "They prepared everything for me when I said I was going out." And then the servant said, "Get rid of anything dangerous." And Mary got up to prepare the snacks. Then Ray looked at the flowers and said, "Wow, they're all so beautiful." And here, when she saw the gardener, she said to him, "Hello, Mr. Gardener. It's been raining a lot lately, and I'm sure the flowers could use some sunshine." But the gardener didn't say a word. And here Ray looked at him in surprise and said, "He really doesn't talk much, but I feel a strange sense of comfort when I'm with him." And suddenly she put her face to the ground in sadness and said, "Especially since there's been a lot going on lately." And she remembered her brother and the answer he sent her. And Claudine, who was tied up, and said to her, "I'm afraid to lose you because of my mistake." And here she smiled and said to him, "I can help too." And at the same time she was saying to herself, "What did he mean when he said he was afraid to lose me? Is Clodan still hiding something from me?" And she started watering the flowers, saying to herself, "I'm still worried even after hearing him say he loves me, and I still barely know anything about Claudine and this mansion. What is he trying to hide from me? I wish he could just tell me." And here she was, surprised that the gardener gave her a flower, and she said, "Oh, this is it." And here he said to her, "This flower means happiness." And here she looked at him in astonishment, saying to herself, worried about my troubled expression, "Giving a flower that means happiness." And here she started laughing and took it from him, saying, "Thank you very much." And she looked at the flower, saying to herself, "No matter if this place is strange, there are kind people here who care about me." Then she smiled and said to the gardener, "Do you know the name of this flower?" But suddenly the gardener stood up and looked at something in fear, sweating. And it was clear that he was looking at Claudine, who was looking at him in anger. And here Claudine said to Ray, "I was wondering where you were going." Ray, "Claudine." And she went to him and said, "What's wrong?" Clodan, in anger, "Are you asking what's wrong?" And here Clodan looked at her shoes and said to her, giving a ridiculous reason, "You didn't even wear the shoes I bought you, and yet you smile at a wilted flower. If you're so happy with those old worn-out shoes, you can happily get rid of everything else." Ray tensely said to him, "That's not the reason. I wanted to keep them as long as possible." But Clodan took his hands off her and said, "I don't care." Then he said, "Philip," and he said, "Yes." And here he looked angrily at the gardener and said, "Get him out of here." And here the gardener felt tense because he was cursed, and if he left the castle he would die. And here Ray shouted at Clodan, "Is it because of my shoes? I just thought it would be a shame to wear the shoes anywhere and the soles are worn out. I understand that you're upset, but this is going too far." Clodan, "And what about the flower?" Ray, "He only gave me this flower to make me happy. Don't tell me that's why you're angry." Clodan, "So what if it is? What's wrong with that?" And here Ray, in anger, said to him, "All he did was give me a flower, and it was just consideration, that's all." And here Clodan smiled and said to her, "I'm sorry I can't be as considerate. Is that why you wanted to break up with me?" Then he left, and here Ray said to him, "Clodan, that's not what I meant." But Clodan didn't answer her and said to Philip, "I told you to get rid of him, Philip." And at dinner, Clodan shouted at Mary, and she said, "Yes, sir." And here Clodan said to her, "Tell Philip that I know he hid that stammerer in the barn, so he better take care of it before I do something about it." And here Ray said to him, "Clodan, why do you have to go this far? I don't understand why you're so angry. I've already told you that the gardener is not at fault." And here Clodan looked at her angrily and said to her, "So what if he's not guilty? You'll hide him in your room." And here Ray looked at him angrily and then said, "I'm going. I can't stand sitting here and eating with you." And she left quickly. But the maid Mary went after her, saying, "Lady Mary, wait a minute." And she grabbed her and said, "Lady Ray, calm down." And Ray, "Let me go, Mary. I don't understand why Clodan is making such a fuss over something so trivial." She was angry as she said, "I told him there was nothing to worry about, but he keeps finding something to blame me for. It's infuriating." But Mary held her back again and said, "He's just jealous. He's so madly in love with you that even something insignificant like this makes him jealous. And it's natural for lovers to quarrel." But Ray said to her angrily, "If he was jealous, he could just say so. This is how he is with everything.